Hi everyone. Okay, so what I'm going to show you right now is how to use your graphing calculator to answer those trigonometric identity questions that you know you're going to get on the exam. So here we go. Here's a pretty standard one. Let's say it's a multiple choice question. I want to express cotangent squared in terms of cosine, and here are my options here. So what I'm going to do here is, first of all, I'm going to identify what mode I'm in. In this case I'm in radians. Doesn't really matter. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to choose an angle that's maybe a little odd. For example, I might take 17 degrees, okay, or 17 radians, and I'm going to store in X. Press enter. So now every time I use the X button, it's gonna see that as 17. Now you don't have to worry about this after the question. Just let don't worry about ever having to overwrite that. The calculator will do that on its own anytime it uses X here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to evaluate cotangent squared of X. So 1 divided by the tangent of X squared. And I'm going to note that that answer is 0.081 or 82, I suppose. Okay, so now I'm going to go to each one. So I do A. So I'll clear that out here. I know what it's supposed to be. So the square root of 1 minus the cosine of X, close bracket, squared. Okay, now I'm going to make sure that I get out of the radical there, divided by cosine of X. Okay, well that didn't equal the same thing, so I move on to B. This time I'll put brackets around it. 1 minus the cosine of X, close brackets, squared. Okay, close the brackets, divided by the cosine of X squared. Now, well, that's certainly not it. I take a look at this next one here. That is the cosine of X divided by the square root of 1 minus the cosine of X, close brackets, squared. Press enter. Well, that's not it. So by process of elimination, it has to be this last one, but just to check, cosine of X squared divided by bracket 1 minus the cosine of X, close bracket, squared. And there it is. So I see the same decimal popping up. I know that my answer is in fact D. Now, it might not be a bad idea for you to start looking at D, because it's probably generally the case that they would make you go looking through all those answers to find that one. But anyway, that's not not a fast way of doing this, but it will certainly work, and it should work for all of those. Just don't use the angles. If you're in degree mode, don't use 30, 45, or 60. Those angles tend to be places where several of these functions will overlap, and so you might get a false result out of that. You can also use this same sort of thinking to answer a Timmy question. One of those questions where Timmy makes a mistake along the line here. So where did Timmy mess up here? So what I've got here is an identity. So here's where we start. And then here's the first step, what it equals to. So what I'm going to do here, same sort of thing. I've got the X equals 17 in here. I'm just going to evaluate, for example, this first step right here and get a decimal. So that, clear this all up here. I've still got X in there. So sine divided by cosine of X, close bracket, plus 1, plus, and we'll just put that up here, cosine of X divided by the sine of X. Okay, so when I evaluate this with the X equals 17 radians here, I am going to get negative 1.04. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm going to go through each step and make sure that I get exactly the same thing. Okay, so sine of X, close bracket, divided by bracket for the whole denominator, sine of X, bracket, cosine of X, close bracket, plus 1. Now, 9 times out of 10 when people ask me or they show me something on the calculator and they're not getting the answer that they expect, 9 times out of 10 it's because they are not putting the appropriate brackets in there. So just be careful that you are in fact, you are in fact closing the brackets that you open every time you do that. Okay, so right now I plugged in that entire first step there, step A, and I get exactly the same decimal I started with. That means that Timmy did not make a mistake in that step here. So now we move on to the next one. Okay, so in brackets, that first one, that's going to be sine of x squared plus the cosine of x squared plus 1, all in brackets divided by, and again, brackets are on the whole denominator, sine of x times, oops, sorry, I want to put brackets around that. Okay, cosine of x plus 1, close bracket for the entire numerator. Ah, and this one equals negative 2.87. That is not equal to negative 1.04. Step B is the place where Timmy made the mistake. Now again, that's not an extremely fast method, but in a pinch, that will work to help you get the right answer.